Biology says that we inherit generational trauma. So even if I had a perfect life and my parents had trauma, which we know they did as immigrants, I inherit a tremendous amount of their DNA and belief structures. When you're really traumatized and your parents are like, you're always on high alert. You're looking for the exits. You're like, what can I possibly do to stay safe so no one F's with me? Tim Hallbaum and Chris Hallbaum are these two people I learned about beliefs from. And they talked a lot about cultural beliefs, societal beliefs, familial beliefs.
Hi everyone, we're back with another episode of Cut the BS, where we try to keep it real. This time we are in my home country, Pakistan, and we have a guest from the US, but she is born in Pakistan, raised in Afghanistan, and then moved to the US. So lovely to have this mix of our side of the world on this episode. I have Neha here with me, who's going to be my co-host, and our guest, Amina. Thank you for being here, Amina.
Thank you.
So really to start off, Quick story. I know, we have so much to talk about in less time, but quick story. Born, raised, moved to the US. What sort of work you've done, where you studied. So a quick glimpse of your journey till now.
Yeah. Well, I consider myself an archaeologist of the mind. And so I studied neuroplasticity. I'm Afghani, but I was born in Pakistan and moved to the US in California when I was really young. And I just had a lot of anxiety. I grew up in a really intense environment. And I just always wondered if I could feel better. And I tried a lot of things and nothing helped me. It wasn't until I found neurolinguistics in my early 20s that I realized for the first time in my life I could actually change my brain. It was like a light went off. I literally never imagined you could actually rewire your brain. I just thought I felt stupid, bad, dumb, ugly, awful, small. And that was my lot in life. And I should be lucky for the crumbs I got. And, once I discovered the power of being able to change your mind and your thinking, my life sort of took off. And then I decided that I wanted to dedicate my life to this. And I started working with like hardcore addicts, people that really struggled. And then I, early in my career, met Marianne Williamson, and she was really prominent in the US, best-selling author, and she ran for president. And she introduced, I started to understand what another population works with. And I started working with like Silicon Valley elite. And I realized really we all struggle with the same thing, whether you're coming from addiction or whether you're an elite. And I just thought we could all use this magic and technology. And so I just started spreading it.
Yeah. Lovely. Really going, before going into your journey, your professional journey at least, what do you remember if there was a certain point where you discovered this thing or when you thought about this thing? Yeah. Or was it a set of things that happened as you were growing up?
Yeah. So for me, I was always a super sensitive child. I was very empathetic. I could feel what everyone in the room was feeling. And that happens when you have trauma. When you're really traumatized and your parents are like, or like they're, you're always on high alert. You're looking for the exits. You're like, what can I possibly do to stay safe so no one F's with me? No one messes with me, right? But most people that are very empathetic come from trauma. They come from hypersensitive environments where you have to care for other people's feelings to be safe. Yeah. So when my parents divorced when I was 9, I knew I had a lot of anxiety, and my mom was a very nurturing person. So by 16, I was doing yoga. 19, I was in India. In my early 20s, I discovered this mental health work. And I had the freedom from shame to explore my, at the time, vulnerabilities and weaknesses. And so, that was a real gift. And my mission in life is to help everyone, particularly people like us, people of color, people of cultural descents outside of the Western world, to understand it's okay to work on your mental health.
We attended, you mentioned that you went through this really traumatic experience which eventually later on you realized that this is where all of your trauma was rooted to.
Yeah.
And could you talk a little bit about what exactly you went through and how over time you dealt with it, and what was the point where you realized that this is where most of your anxiety or
Yeah.
deep-rooted beliefs were coming
Yeah.
from?
Well, I hate to say it, but I'm not an exception to the rule. Every single one of us have trauma. If you've been through the pandemic, you have trauma. So when people say, I don't have any trauma, I don't need to do anything, it's complete bullshit. What we really, really need to
I
recognize.
think that's a coping mechanism as well, that
Yeah,
people
it's
have, not
denial.
even accepting
Yeah.
that you do have trauma.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
easier that way.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, biology says that we inherit generational trauma. So even if I had a perfect life and my parents had trauma, which we know they did as immigrants, I inherit a tremendous amount of their DNA and belief structures. So the very first thing that I think most people have to do is assess that we have these limiting beliefs. And for me, it wasn't just one thing. It was the realization that I'd walk into a room and feel really small. It was the realization that I got good grades and I felt stupid. It was the realization that no matter what happened, I never felt like I could speak up. I wanted to say yes, but I wanted to say no and I'd say yes. It was the realization that when something good happened, I thought I was lucky. It was the realization that no matter how much people complimented me, I never believed them.
Yeah.
Right? All of those moments. It was the realization that I cared more what you thought about me than my own wellness. And that one look could shatter my self-esteem, right? It was the realization that I used, food and numbing out on TV and all of that. It was just, when I hit rock bottom was when, I'd been living in the United States, and I remember I got really drunk and I drove my family home. And I drove them home like for 2 hours, and I couldn't remember the next day how I got home. And I was like, oh my God, I could have put everyone in danger. I was partying too much. I was suppressing. I never felt happy just being sober. I always wanted to escape. And when I say sober, I also mean sugar and alcohol or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd hit a point where I couldn't go on anymore. Nothing was making me happy and I needed help. And the minute I realized I needed help, the doors open. In a Chinese tradition, they say, when you're ready, the teacher will appear.
Yeah.
I believe God, the universe, will always bring you help if you decide you want it.
Lovely. I have a follow-up question, right? So through this journey of helping others, and I want to explore some, best stories that you've had, best stories that have helped people. But because I'm a first generation immigrant too, right? So I know that I have a lot of the things that you're mentioning. Is there a certain type of behavior you notice with first generation immigrants, especially in the business world, that you see stands out that, okay, if mostly first generation immigrants in the business world have these sort of traumas or these sort of problems?
Yeah, so there's some characteristics that I've noticed of first generation immigrants that might limit them. The first one is this idea of time debting, where they spend too much time preparing for things without the credit. The second thing is that they have a constant need to prove themselves. Like they know they're good and they get the validation, but they'll keep having a need to reprove and reprove and reprove. The third thing is overcompensating, taking care of people too much. The fourth thing is not putting things in actual I could go on. But like if you ask, fourth thing is not having professional clarity, thinking that people will take care of you the way that they might in your culture, but like needing to put things in contracts, getting really clear.
Yeah.
Those kinds of little things where you're not really valuing yourself. The other thing that I see a lot with women, and this is universal, is that women will take the first offer that's given to them and they won't negotiate, because feel like we're so lucky to even be at the table, don't rock the boat kind of thing. So all of those things ascribe to worth and esteem. And what we have to do, I think, as immigrants and as people that are not of a dominant race in the Western society is always check things out with people. Because the other side that I see that's the traumatized side of immigrants is like this, conning bullshit of like, let me get one over you and let me try to trick and let me, be transactional. Both sides are coming from the same root. The root is lack. And underneath lack is low self-esteem and worthiness. So try to be as honest as possible is my tip, but check it out with somebody who doesn't believe what you believe. I always, like when I was moving up and working with people and these larger companies, my thinking would bring me right here. And then I talked to someone who I knew was thinking this level. I was like, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? And they're like, So it's really important.
Yeah, I think the outside perspective sort of gets you clarity at times as well. But it's really commendable the fact that it's really hard to even accept at times that you need help. And as a woman, when you were already looked at a certain way, asking for help or even accepting that okay, there might be times where you have that sort of tunnel vision and you're not looking at the bigger picture at times and somebody else is coming, you get really defensive about that.
For sure. The hardest thing I would say is to believe when no one else believes in you or when you're shamed for being vulnerable. Like even at this talk that I gave here at Future Fest in Pakistan, I don't know, maybe the room had 1,000-person capacity. It was maybe 75% full. Lots of people there. But there were 3 evacuations that happened. One in the beginning, one in the middle, and one at the end. And I had to really tell myself like...
I can notice that.
Yeah.
I told her also.
Yeah. Oh, you told her? Or
told me? I told her in the talk that this might be frustrating for her.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay, the first time, no problem. Yeah. You're at the wrong event. But in the middle and at the end, you're clearly leaving because you don't like the content, right? It takes a certain amount of conviction to know that not everyone's going to like your message and that we as immigrants and whatever, we're always going to be polarizing because our culture is so different than the Western society. So if people react in a really positive way and a negative way, it means you evoked something.
Yeah.
So don't be discouraged by that.
That's true.
Yeah, and that's I've noticed that too. Again, I don't work with people like you work with them, but on business capacity, I think that's also a similar sort of behavior. Either they really like you or they really dislike you.
Yeah.
This polarization. One thing, and I think it's relevant to the Future Fest also. I think with work like yours, I can speak from the people that I know. A lot of people will have a hard time just understanding what you exactly do. I'm just being real, especially in such a crowd, right? So, and even if they do, how to start working with you. For example, me, right? Again, I know some of my limiting beliefs, because I talk about them, especially in the past few years. But a lot of people won't even know. So, how do you, go through that initial discovery phase?
Yeah.
People, this person has trouble with something.
Yeah.
They don't even know it themselves, or they can't express it. So is there a certain mechanism that you work with these people, or they have to know before they come to you?
Yeah.
And also, before you answer that, I want to add to this question. Do you think there's a difference between cultures as well? Like you've traveled around and you've dealt with people from different cultures. Do you think that the sort of acceptance that you have for these sort of things is different culturally?
Yeah, totally. It is different culturally. And really what you're asking is how can you identify oppression, systemic inherent racism issues, and actual limiting beliefs is really what you're saying. Like, Tim Halbaum and Chris Halbaum are these 2 people I learned about beliefs from. And they talked a lot about cultural beliefs, societal beliefs, familial beliefs. So obviously, you can't tell somebody like me of being a woman that just believe anything's possible when there's a white male that might get more access than me just for being male and just for being a different color. I might be stronger in certain things, but that happens. Yeah. So it's not about toxic positivity. It's about recognizing the meaning you make up for it. And that's cultural or personal. So let me expand on that, because this is the root of exactly what you're asking. So in my talk, the thesis that I was saying is it's not what happens, it's your reaction. So when I was little, my dad used to say to me, you don't know, let me teach you. You're young, you don't know, let me teach you. And so that in and of itself is not a bad thing. But the meaning I made up about it is I'm not allowed to be smart with my dad. So that's a belief. I can't change his, he was an Afghani man that was misogynistic. I can't change that perception of his. But I made up a meaning about it because I was young, and as children, you don't have logic to comprehend. You personalize things. So the number one thing we can do as adults is recognize, how am I limiting myself in terms of my circumstance? Because you always hear, people that have everything and can't get shit done. But there are some people that come from nothing and can get things done. And it's what they believe about themselves and possibilities. So we can't change oppression. We can't change racism. We can't even change sexism. But what we can change is what it means to you, right? So if someone's feeling really oppressed because of an economic standard, well, one person might think, okay, it's really bad. It's always going to be bad and it never gets better. Okay, that's a victim mindset. Another person might think, this is horrible. I hate this. But what I want to do is I want to invest in myself. I want to grow out of this pain. And even though they can't afford it, they watch YouTube channels. I mean, YouTube is free university, right? And they find ways to better themselves. And they start becoming happier and less stressed, right? When you change your brain, your perception goes from here to here. When you have more choice and you have more opportunity, clarity comes. So that's all we're asking people to do, is understand that we all have limitations. What are your limitations? Well, maybe we all kind of know what we're struggling with. The difference is we don't share it. We all kind of know we feel crappy inside. We all kind of know we're stressed out. We all kind of know that with authority, we're like, don't be mad at me, right? Like we all have this universally. Work on those things. Work on your fear of authority. Work on your fear that, you're just not good enough.
When you identify, let's say you identify a couple of traits that you have internally coming from maybe your parents or maybe some experiences that you've gone through, what's the next step that you have to take? What's the ideal route once you've identified a couple of traits that might limit you in terms of your profession or just your personal life as well?
I mean, obviously, this is a very challenging question because it's so multifaceted. You're saying, what's the next step in getting help and feeling better? So there's 3 buckets of that. There's the free route, there's the support route, and there's the avoidance route. I would not recommend the avoidance route.
Which is what most of us generally do.
It's like, that doesn't look here, don't look here, don't do that. So the avoidance route does nothing, and I want to start there. When we push down our negative feelings, what happens is it doesn't go away, it just gets thickened and harder. And it starts controlling you even more. So when we have really difficult feelings, it goes and sits in this part of your brain. It's called the limbic part of your brain. It's the emotional part of your brain. Think of it like a desert, right? It's going to dry out and starve. But like it's here and you shut the lid on it. Now, this belief and this thinking is controlling you, whether you address it or not. Because everything stays in the unconscious mind, in the other conscious. 95% of what we think and act and feel is there. The thing that we have to do, the very first thing you can do is get it from the unconscious to the conscious by naming it. In my talk, I said, if you can name your feeling, it makes it easier for you to process. Now, here's the thing that most people don't understand. When you start doing your emotional work and you've had trauma, you end up feeling worse. And then they're like, it doesn't work. Forget it. But it's like Louise Hay says, did anybody eat lasagna here? Or like when you cook a really greasy food, when you're washing that plate, you're washing it and the grease is stuck and everything is, gross and it's hard to get out. At first it looks worse, but if you keep washing, you clean it. So the avoidance route just prolongs it. And then you have dis-ease. Then you have disease of really, the body will start keeping the score. So if you suppress your emotions enough, your body starts to hurt. Most people that have really strong depression and trauma end up getting really horrible physical diseases.
But do you think that not avoiding those sort of feelings is only for someone who has the privilege of time, that while you're cleaning the dish, when it gets messed up, other things won't get messed up, and if they do, you have the privilege of time and not of letting things get messed up. A lot of people might not even have the privilege of giving themselves that window where if everything is getting messed up, it's fine.
I don't know. I might disagree with you, because everybody has time to be on social media and watch movies and be on TV and go out on weekends. I think it's burdensome, which is more avoidance. Oh, I don't have time for this. Of course you do. You have 30 minutes a week to talk to a therapist, right? So there's the avoidance route, which is all the excuses. List them. That's the first place to start. You did something so positive. You listed, you're like, fuck this, I don't have time for this. Yeah, of course you do. I'm sorry. You have time to be on Instagram. You have time to film this podcast. You certainly have time to look inside for 30 minutes. It's just painful. So really what you're saying is, how do you recover from when you address the pain and it gets worse? Yes, it does get worse in the beginning, so we need support. So there's the avoidance route, which ultimately ends up being really bad. There's another route where we're afraid to look inside, so you start small. But I would say the number one thing that helps is what Louise Hay taught me. She's my favorite author. Do you know her? Okay, she wrote this book called You Can Heal Your Life. And the thesis is that if you do positive affirmations, it changes your life. And I obviously have done therapy and coaching, and my work combines like coaching and parts of neuroscience, and I help people rewire their beliefs. But if you just do positive affirmations, if you find 3 things that are horrible right now, and you literally every day say it 20 times in front of the mirror, I promise you, in 21 days, you will feel differently about it. I promise you. There's not a single person. I have done thousands of hours of training. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people from every culture from around the world. And the positive affirmations, from a scientific perspective, starts to dull the negative thinking and rewire your brain. So I'll give you an example. It's not like I have $1 million. That's not a positive affirmation. That's toxic positivity. It's wow, I feel really, I think most people on some level feel like they're not good enough or not smart enough. Let's just use the smart one. I'm not smart enough. If you say something like, if the true feeling is not smart enough, or in our cultures, it might be, I don't deserve or I'm not allowed. Permission becomes a really big thing, right? I give myself permission to feel everything is working out for me. I just say it. Say it 3 times right now.
Everything is working out for me.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah. At first, when you say it, it
feels like such a lie.
Yeah, it feels like a lie, which is natural because your brain has been wired on this pathway. But the only way to reverse your thinking is to offer new stimulus. When a plant is dying, if you want to resurrect the plant, you have to water it and give it food. Your brain's food is compassion, love, and gentleness. Your brain's superfood is compassion, love, and gentleness. You cannot rewire your brain for positivity without feeding it. If your plant is dead, you have to do something different if you want the plant to die. And I can hear in your voice that you're scared and it feels weird and it feels dumb. So you can say, I'm willing to change.
Just go Neha.
I'm willing to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can just say, like, if it feels like, I'm willing to accept myself.
I'm willing to accept myself.
Yeah, it's because you don't accept it yet. That's okay too. So you notice if you say that, like, I'm willing to face my difficulty and I'm safe. I'm safe to face my difficulty.
I'm safe to face
Right?
my difficulties.
Like, so that sort of thing really, it does a few things. There was research done on people taking pieces of paper, writing positive things on it and negative things, and putting it in water. And then they froze it. And they saw that when they froze both bottles and the pieces of paper that said negative things, like, I hate you, you suck, when they looked at the microscope, the crystals were like dark and they looked toxic. But then when they took the positive things, like, I love you and you are safe and I accept you, the crystals of the water and the pieces of paper look like beautiful snowflakes.
Is it like, so with this sort of concept, is it more like a self-fulfilling prophecy? That when you're sort of telling yourself one thing constantly, then you're subconsciously not trying to sabotage yourself in your own journey.
Yeah, but actually, exactly. But what I'm saying is, if you look at water, the water and the crystallization of water responded toxically to the negativity and positively to the positivity. Now, when you take oppression and cultural trauma, and the level of cortisol that most immigrants have is 3 persons stress into 1. We're just used to that.
Yeah.
But you got to start somewhere. And yeah, it's lame to be like, I'm good and people like me, but that's not it. It's like, I'm willing to change. What happens neurologically is you start producing happier chemicals. Like, I want everyone to try this. Like, go close your door, go in your bathroom, look in the mirror, and literally start saying, I'm willing to change. I'm willing to forgive people. Just saying that, you'll start producing happy chemicals. But it has to be done consistently for like 2.5 minutes. Set a timer.
Just to be the devil's advocate here, and because it's cut the bullshit, so I'll just give one perspective that might counter your. So a lot of people nowadays, so having some sort of label attached to you that, oh, I have anxiety or I have depression, has become also
like
trendy.
A cop out.
Yeah. It's also trendy to have depression now. It's also trendy to have anxiety now, and a lot of people use that as a card as well. So when you're giving that sort of perspective, that first you have to look within. A lot of, if I talk in the professional capacity, we are sort of, so I'm 27. I'm sort of trained to at a lot of times not say no in a professional workspace as well. Whether it be opportunities or whether it be just generally work that I'm not getting paid for, anything of that sort. 1, because it's a good learning opportunity, or 2, maybe because I feel like I have to do more to deserve what I have or where I want to be eventually. But a lot of newer kids, this might be a good thing, they're very protective about their mental health, they're very aware, and all of them have that sort of those boundaries, which is a good thing. But at the same time, within a professional workspace, do you think that nowadays it has also become like just something that you say to get out of anything or to justify your behaviors? Because a lot of people might be toxic, they might be gaslighting themselves towards other people, but they also might just be justifying it because everybody is accepted now. Every person's emotions are validated, every person's right. So when you're not even looking within and asking yourself, where are you wrong or how can you improve? Because at all times we're telling ourselves in every Instagram reel, every coach, life coach, self-help book is telling you that whatever you're feeling is justified, whatever you're feeling is okay. So everybody then is right. Then who's wrong? Who exactly is wrong? And how do you make yourself better? How do you grow?
How did you realize that you have a problem, basically, because of
Sometimes
things
you are
being
the
justified?
problem.
Yeah.
Sometimes you are the problem.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to accept that as well to, grow in a certain way. Sometimes you
Yeah.
have to acknowledge that you've done something wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I do think everyone's feelings are valid, and I do think what you do about it also matters. So if I feel angry, that's valid. If I punch you in the face, that's not valid. And if somebody is using it as a mechanism to manipulate, the problem is the manipulation, not what they say. If somebody's using a code word or a buzzword, if I have anxiety, that's why I couldn't do it, they're lying, right? I don't know many people that are doing that, but I have now heard this twice in Pakistan that people are using that.
Yeah.
But the source of that comes from victim helplessness and nobody hearing them.
Yeah.
So it's still a problem. And the problem is, like, a bunch of older people walked out of my talk. I don't know if you guys noticed.
We noticed.
It was all
We
older
noticed.
people, right? It wasn't,
And,
there weren't.
surprisingly, at that point, you were talking about how feelings that men have are more valid because they feel more. And a couple of men just walked out.
And
And I
said,
wasn't
"That's
even
ironic."
saying men are valid. I was saying society doesn't allow men
Yeah.
to express
To-
that side.
that
And they
much.
walked
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
It's like, well, hey, I'm validating you.
Yeah.
Super weird. So everything is about motivation. Everything is about motivation. If you say hi to somebody and you're like, oh, hi, and you touch their shoulder and you're trying to flirt with them and you're pretending that you're not, your motivations are misaligned. If you are being nice to someone to get something from them, your motivations aren't aligned.
Yeah.
Usually out of poverty and trauma comes transaction and survival. But the less we have a need to do that, and the more you can begin to change the structure of your thinking, even in an oppressed society, it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
The easier it will be to take congruent action.
Yeah.
Honestly, genuinely. And we've seen it. It's not promoted a lot, but we have seen it. Look at Oprah, for example, or look at Malala, for example, or, there's lots of people that have made a difference. It's just that right now, with even the US leadership, Trump is a sex offender and a felon, and he's telling people how to lead, right? We have to look inside and find our own truth. And I think that this is a very spiritual community, right? So it really helps, even if you think you don't have a problem, to understand your values. What do I really value? The way to understand your values is to figure out what's really important to you. And when you get really mad, usually you get really mad because a value has been violated. So something easy that people can do is start Googling top, 50 values, and then write down what you think your values are and hold on to that. That's a really good way. Anytime you understand yourself in a better way, start doing personality assessments. Understand what you're really good at. Start slowly. Is it possible for people in Pakistan to get therapy? Is it?
Yeah.
Is it accessible?
Yeah, it is.
Like in a
there are not
cheap
a
way?
lot of good therapists here, and
You have
if
to
you
find
have a
it.
psychology minor, even you can get a license to be. So I have a psychology minor,
Yeah.
and I can become a therapist. So which is why it's
So it's
hard
like
to
whatever.
trust people as well.
So I would just say, look, do these things. Meditate for 3 minutes every morning. Learn about how positive affirmations can change your brain. Understand your values. As much as possible, try to recognize your motivations. And it's so ingrained, we don't even know our motivations. But just catch yourself if you think you're trying to manipulate. Find one person that you could trust to encourage you, and read one book a month. And the books that I would recommend, look, if you spend these 5 months reading these 5 books, I think it will help. Okay. And I need to write a book. First book is Louise Hay. You Can Heal Your Life. The shortest book, I've read that book without exaggeration 56 times.
Wow.
And I've listened to the audio maybe 115 times. Best 3 hours of my life. You Can Heal Your Life. Best book ever, 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 ever. There's another one called The Universe Has Your Back by Gabrielle Bernstein. It just talks about the universal truths beyond religion, but more spirituality, and how it's everyone's birthright to be abundant. Codependency No More by Melanie Beatty. It talks about how we live in such a codependent world that we manipulate others to feel better about ourselves. If you need me, then I don't have to face my stuff and I can control you,
Yeah.
right? Psychology of Money. Really, really good book. Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, and The Game of Life and How to Play It. Those books, if you read, I don't care who you are, if you don't think you have a problem, you don't have limiting beliefs, it's going to enhance your brain. And after you read those books, listen to them all on audio. It's a total of 3, 6, 8, 10. It's a total of 19 hours to 25 hours.
Yeah.
Do you have 25 hours in 5 months to just listen to audiobooks? Start there.
Yeah. We drive more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you drive more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of questions. We have the last 5 minutes. So one thing that I always ask people is that in your journey till now, and of course the work that you do also, do you notice that a lot of these people don't have enough support, like support
Yeah,
system,
totally.
true people they can trust
Yeah.
and work with? So how important is that factor in your journey too till now,
Yeah.
and also the people that you work with?
It's really hard to find support. And as I say this, like, I'm very well aware that sometimes, you know, people are shamed and thrown out and disowned if they express a feeling or if they don't do what their parents say, or they'll be hit or whatever. So the consequences are greater than your needs. But if somebody doesn't have anybody they can trust, having a mediocre therapist is better than nothing, for example. But there's also 12-step recovery programs that are free, and they're kind of like support groups. And for me, I really love those programs. Like, I joined 12-step recovery programs when I was in my 20s, and they're free meetings all over the world that anything you have a problem with, food, alcohol, relationships, money, there's an anonymous program. Nobody knows you're there. Nobody, you know, whatever. And there's meetings every hour on the hour, 24 hours a day.
Wow.
And you go and hear people from Iraq and Iran and Malaysia and Turkey and Spain and lots in America. And you just go listen. And the idea of being in those anonymous private groups and just getting help is so phenomenal. I had this mantra where I didn't trust anyone. I knew my family loved me, but I didn't know how to even express myself. The one thing that I want people to remember is that getting help is better than not getting help. Anything helps. Joining those groups, reading the books, like, you see the theme. It's action. What my friend Julian always says is the opposite of fear is not having fear. The opposite of fear is inaction. So we must take action. And, you know, some of us, if we want that jacket or we want that ice cream, we will go to all lengths, right? Like, I found those sneakers. Like, we know how to take action on what we want. We're just too afraid to take action on something inside. Because remember what I said, I'll close this. When we're kids, we think bad things are happening to me, I'm bad. Shame is the lowest vibration emotion that you could possibly have. It erodes our organs. This emotion is so toxic. It triples our cortisol levels. We cannot operate in huge amounts of shame. And guess what's most pervasive in cultures? in South Asian, Indian, African, Latin culture. Shame. Catholic, right? Shame. So the biggest thing you can possibly do is seek help on this thing that's so shameful. In 12-step recovery, they said we're only as sick as our secrets. So we have to get past the shame and take, the tiny little step of asking for help. And that asking for help might be prayer. Like on your knees, like, God, please help me find a solution. I'm not even religious, but I pray because it produces oxytocin in your brain. It's the fastest way to
Sometimes you say out loud something and it becomes less intimidating.
And
when you say it out loud.
and neurologically it starts framing your brain. So do anything, because the cost is so high when we have shame and we destroy ourselves. And all of these things rewire your brain. Anything different to a dead plant, when you water it, give it sun, give it food, it grows. Well, feeding your brain love and positivity is the only way.
Lovely, beautiful. Last two questions. One has there been a time where you've hated your job or been like, why am I in this field?
Yeah, for sure.
Do you remember a certain story or incident really quickly?
Well, something I realized is, this is very controversial, but we tend to create in our professional lives the experiences we had in our home lives. And I really want you to sit with that. You see, our brains are like a computer system. By the time we're 7, our coding and our software is set. My beliefs about myself and the world is set. So what I do in life is, because I have this software, then every program that I run, every input that I take is based on that coding, right? You guys are following me, right?
Yeah.
So of course, bosses and authority replicate a software, a track, a program, parent, right? Relationships, closeness, intimacy catapults a program of mom, dad, sister, brother. So what we, have to realize, now some people might say, I had a great upbringing, but I have this horrible boss or whatever. I get it. But we tend to recreate a dynamic that we've had. So if we're used to being yelled at, if we're used to pleasing somebody else, if we're used to being oppressed, we run that program in our life. Now, I know for me, because I was a woman, I am a woman, I identify as a woman. Women were very much seen as being below men. Although my mom was way more intelligent than my dad, she was way more organized, way more competent. She had no authority, no power, and was told she was less. So she believed that. So she would say things to me like, well, you can't do that. Like, that's not possible. Because that's what she thought the limitation of a woman was. So then when I went into the professional workplace and somebody says, you can't do that, I'd believe them, because I'd heard that before. I wouldn't be like, no, what are you talking about? Of course I can do that. Right? So that's why it's all so fucked up. So if someone hates their job, I get it. It sucks. But the one thing you have to ask yourself is, what does this remind me of? It's not about them. Yeah, they suck. But if you're in that situation, you're also choosing to be there. Maybe you can't get out. But what does it remind you of? Knowledge is power. Because as soon as you recognize the source of the pain, your brain will then try to find a solution. It's when we're in avoidance, it's when we're drunk with TV or Netflix or food or whatever, that you just want to blame. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not saying it's easy. It sucks to be like, whoa, every boss I've ever had reminds me of my bully dad. That sucks.
The Freudian theory.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That sucks.
Yeah.
But if you recognize that you have a tendency of recreating bullies in your life, at some point you can choose, I'm no longer going to be bullied. I'll tell you what, I was totally bullied. I was totally bullied my whole life. And then to
And then
compensate,
sometimes you don't even call them out. Sometimes you just tolerate.
well, I didn't even know I was being bullied.
Yeah.
I just thought this is normal. This
Yeah.
is what it is. Somebody like me who's so dumb and so stupid, and mind you, I had an A GPA in college, got to grad school, like did all these things, nothing, got accepted to grad school, like studied a bunch of things, and it was like, I just believed it. So the best thing we can do if money's an issue or time is an issue or resources are an issue is to take some responsibility. Recognize first, why am I pissed? I'm pissed because they treat me poorly. Valid. What am I doing about it? I'm shrinking. I'm punching my pillow. I'm avoiding them. I'm being passive aggressive. Name it. What's your part? Victim is a very powerful place to be. You know why? Because you're helpless, so you have no responsibility.
Yeah.
It's happening to me. It's a lot harder to say, look, I'm in a shitty ass situation. I hate it. I need the money. I can't leave my boss. I don't know. I'm making this up. But I'm going to start sending 3 applications a day. That's 90 applications in 30 days. That's 180 applications in 60 days. So you're telling me that you're still a victim? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Like
yeah.
we must take action and find someone that loves you and borrow their faith. I have these 2 guys that started a business and it's very successful and I know them. And one of them was the entrepreneur and the other had never been an entrepreneur. And this guy goes to him and says, I'm making this name up because I don't want to name them. It's like, hey, Frank, I have no entrepreneurial skills. I can't do it. I'm not going to go into business with you. And his friend says to Frank, look, Frank, I believe in you so much. Borrow my faith for 30 days. Every time you're worried that you can't do it, remember, I think you can do it.
So sweet.
It's so sweet. So borrow faith from people. You know?
Yeah.
Again, just take action. Anything is better. And say you take action and you fail and you get shamed, at least you were in the arena. Brene Brown says, if you're not falling on your ass, if you're not getting hurt, you're not out there. Like for me to come to Pakistan and talk about emotional wellness and that men have to face their feelings.
Quite the audacity.
Yeah. And then I talk about a trauma of my dad like kidnapping us and, you know, and all these men are like, shit, I don't know what the fuck I did, you know, to my kids. And my sister was like, don't talk about your past. There might be people doing that. And I was like, good.
Yeah.
And then the worst thing happened, they walked out. But then the people that stayed, like you, might do something. And that's what I want.
Yeah, and that's why we're here.
Yeah.
You stayed.
You stayed.
Yeah, we wanted to be here. With the prayer that everybody finds people they can, you know, borrow faith from.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
I know it was
of
lovely.
course.
So much more to talk about. Any closing remarks? Anything you want to tell the audience?
Yeah. Look, if you're not ready to do any work, just keep it in your mind that when you are ready, there's possibility. I think a lot of people say, well, I had no choice. There was nothing available. I promise you, if you don't want to look at it now, in 5 years, your pain will still be there. You know, we can refund your misery. Like, just give it a shot. You know, your misery can always come back. It's there in the parking lot waiting for you. So make a choice. Just make a choice. And if you make the choice that you want help, there's so many options. There's books, there's YouTube, there's 12-Step Recovery, there's podcasts like yours that are so beautiful, you know? we know there's so much out there. And just cut the bullshit and get past your excuses. You know? On that note.
Great ending line. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lovely.